my goal today, Bill, is to kind of walk people through really your transition into becoming a listing agent, like we were just talking about off air. And before we do that, just to kind of set the stage, how long have you been selling real estate, and which market are you in, Bill?
So I'm in the central and eastern Kentucky market. I've had my real estate license. It's kind of a long story, but the my real estate license, I got them 3.5 years ago, and started out as a part-time agent. And August 10th of last year, I became a full-time agent. Kind of made the jump then, but so a little over a year I've been selling full-time.
Got it. Okay. So full time. All right. So, like we were just talking a little bit before we hit the recording, you recently have transitioned your business, Bill, into primarily becoming a listing agent, which we're going to talk about for the majority of the show. Before you made that transition, what were you doing to get business? What were some of the things you were trying that maybe weren't working as well as the things that we're going to talk about today?
So last year I was able to do 10 transactions. That's partly being part-time, and somewhat full-time. And really, I mean, it's cliche, but it's what every new agent does. Why we kind of sit by and we wait for the phone to ring. Try to find people on social media, would post on social media, not really knowing what I was doing, and really taking a lot of referrals. And that just wasn't working out for me. Like I said, I did 10 transactions last year, and I think what I did was like right around 1 million. So I averaged about $100,000 per transaction. That's what I got paid on anyway.
Sure.
And, I felt like I was gone most of the day, going away from the family Saturday and Sunday. But to circle back to your question, it was really just kind of sitting and waiting. I would do some circle prospecting here and there, but I wasn't going after any kind of low hanging fruit, and was just waiting for somebody to call me and say, "Hey, come list my house," or "Hey, help me find a house."
Got it. Yeah, and quite frankly, Bill, I agree. Most newer people to real estate sales do just that, right? I mean, it's a lot of waiting and hoping that the phone will ring. So, what changed for you, Bill, that one day you said, "Okay, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to do something about it." And so, what was the thing that changed that specifically? And then we'll talk about what it is that you're doing that's different.
So at the beginning of this year, I did a program which I don't know if you're familiar with, or anybody who's going to listen to this is familiar with. I did a program called 75 Hard, and
Absolutely. Andy Frisella.
love it. So as you know, and whoever doesn't know, but you have to do two workouts a day, one indoor, one outdoor. My indoor workouts were lifting weights and listening to music. The outdoor workouts were I would go walk or run, and I would listen to a podcast. A buddy of mine introduced me to one of your videos, and just your dialogue and what you said and how you presented yourself calling a for sale by owner really intrigued me. And at that point, I was at the lowest point of my career. To be quite frank with everybody, my bank account was in the red. I was getting late on some payments, and it was either I was actually online one night looking for a job, and my wife was like, I told my wife what I was doing, and she said, "Man, that makes me sick." I said, "What?" She said, "You're thinking about going back to work, you know?" And I thought to myself, I might as well try to put to use. I was like, I'd asked myself, have I gave it everything I've got? And I could look at myself and say, no, I hadn't. And so, like I said, I had been introduced to what you were teaching, and I said, I might as well try what Brandon's doing. And almost right off the rip, man. I mean, I made a few FSBO calls, got a call a week later. A lady wanted me to come list her house. And since then, the listings have been in my business. I feel like I've been kind of rolling in because of the work I've put in. And that was kind of the change. It was either do or die, honestly.
Yeah, wow. I mean, that's powerful. And thank you for being so open and transparent with the audience, because Bill, I think a lot of people feel that way right now because this business is so difficult that it almost brings you to your knees to say, just to your point, it comes in a lot of people's career where they hit rock bottom, and that's the thing that triggers the ultimate change. And so essentially you had to go through that in order to get to where you are now. I call it, a lot of the times with the agents that I coach, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie, you've heard me talk about this, but the movie Shawshank Redemption, where he crawls through the miles and miles and miles of urine and feces and just straight crap to get to his freedom. Sometimes we have to crawl through the shit to get to where we want to go. And that's kind of, I guess, unfortunate, but now looking back, maybe the thing that got you to where you're at today. Would you agree?
I agree. I've always preached this to other agents who reach out to me and they ask me, even before I started becoming somewhat successful here, they're like, well, what do you, how do you get up and what do you do? And I always tell them it's either a wall or a why. You're either dead broke and you need to make money, or you have this grand idea that you want to accomplish one day. And what I've found, and it also comes back to real estate and FSBOs, is that more people are pushed by pain than by pleasure. And I have goals and I have things that I want to do for myself and my family, but it's basically looking down at my phone and not seeing my bank account in the red. It's not having people call me and say, hey, you're 2 weeks late on your payment. That is kind of what's trajected me to where I am now and hopefully a lot further in the future.
Love it. It's a great mindset. And I agree 100%, Bill. We are much more motivated to avoid pain for sure as human beings. And so it could be very, very powerful. So let's break down the business today. So now in 2022, what does your production look like? And then we're going to break down the business with schedule, prospecting, things of that nature.
Yeah. So right now I've got 12 closed transactions. The money that's came from that has been 2.1 million.
That's in the volume, right? Not
volume. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Volume.
I'm like, wow, man, you are a wealthy man.
Yeah, exactly. I wish. But
so you've doubled your business already.
Absolutely.
You've already doubled.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And in your market, what kind of income does that represent so far as we get into Q4?
You're looking at, with where I'm at and, probably right around 60,000.
Yeah. And where do you think you're going to end up at the end of the year?
Well, right now I have listed, I have 3 listings right now, and those 3 are, and when you add them up, it's almost 1.5 million. So I got a chance to double what I've done already in the last quarter. And I've gotten probably another 2 or 3 potentially that are coming. I know I have 1 for sure that I'm going to list next week, and it's going to push me over the 1.5 million. So I had a big goal of 5 million this year, and I may end up right around the 4.5 million mark.
So, I mean, this is phenomenal, Bill. I mean, how exciting, it's you did $1 million last year, and I don't know what that was in income, but maybe 30,000. Is that fair? Something in that ballpark?
That's fair. Yeah.
Yeah. And then this year, if all goes as planned, we're going to break 6 figures your first year as primary listing agent. Is that right?
Man, that is, I've not even broke the numbers down, but to hear you even say that is pretty insane.
Yeah. I mean, because listen, I mean, if you got another 1.5 million closing in Q4, that should push you well over 6 figures. And you deserve it. And so I would imagine that Q4's production is simply a manifestation of all the work you've been putting in Q2 and Q3 that's now turning into business. Is that right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yep. When my back was against the wall and I decided that I was no longer going to fit my schedule to somebody else's schedule, I was not going to run around with buyers, because I had a couple buyers that ran me around for 2 or 3 months when, when you put in 4 or 5 offers. And I'm not exaggerating when I say this. I would imagine between those 2 buyers, I probably showed them 40 properties.
Oh, I believe it.
And when I'm driving probably sometimes an hour away from my home to show them, taking a lot of gas money and everything. But anyway, once I shifted my mindset and said, I just want to list houses. If I get a buyer, I'll work with them out of this transaction, but I'm not scooping up buyers anymore. And basically waking up every day and saying, I'm going to prospect, I'm going to find a seller, I'm going to follow up with them until they say yes. And just putting that into play, like the momentum I'm taking into next year. I know I'm probably putting the cart before the horse. Next year, I plan on just being a completely different person by this time next year.
Oh, absolutely. And you have already proven that this year. And there's no doubt that next year you could find yourself in the top 1% in your market, get to $7, $8, $10 million next year because of something we call pipeline maturity. Yes. You keep putting sellers into the database. We keep following up with them. You can double your business, triple your business year over year over year. And I love the mindset, and so are you finding that now that you're primarily focused on listings, Bill, that because of that, you are actually generating the best buyer business. So if you work with a buyer, in other words, the more you focus on listing, the better buyers you get because of the sellers of the home, people reaching out to you on your listing. Has that been your experience?
On one particular for sale by owner I called, it has led me to 3 or 4 deals because of the referral I got from the initial FSBO listing, the referral I got from them to sell their daughter's house, and then I got a sign call and sold their house, and I'm actually under contract with them on another piece of property that they're buying right now. So yeah, I mean, basically, when I show one buyer, that typically doesn't translate into 2 or 3 more opportunities.
Right.
But as a listing agent, you could get the buy side of it as well. You could get a sign call. In my marketing, I try to call around the area, and if it's in a neighborhood, I'll maybe door knock the neighborhood.
Yep.
So it's ridiculous how just you go from one side and you're struggling, you're barely keeping your head above water, to whenever you shift your mindset and you want to put your sign in the yard. I mean, I won't say people flock to you because that makes it too easy. That's not the case. But when you put the work in, you see the fruits of your labor, and it's very rewarding, honestly.
Yeah, I agree. What do you think, Bill? Not to get too off track, but I am curious. What do you think keeps agents from focusing on building a listing business and keeps them stuck chasing buyers around for so long?
Fear. I think even the low hanging fruit, even an expired listing, a canceled listing, a for sale by owner who, like I've heard you say many times, that's somebody with their hand up saying, "Hey, I want to sell my house." It's just the fear of one, going in there and not knowing what you're doing, and 2, the fear that they may hang up on you. But I mean, that's an irrational fear to me now, which I get it. I've been in that same spot where that phone feels like it's 1,000 pounds to pick up. But I think it's honestly just fear. And also, I feel like sometimes if you really put the work in, finding a buyer is pretty easy.
Yeah.
It's easier, in my opinion.
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. And so let's jump into your business now. So based on what you just said, I would assume you're getting all of this business now through direct outbound prospecting. Is that correct?
That is correct. Pretty much.
Now that is a massive shift, and that is a very difficult thing for most agents, because to your point, we talk about the path of least resistance is working with buyers. A lot easier to go just chase buyers around. It doesn't pay very well, but the pain and the fear and the feeling of being uncomfortable because you have to work on your sales skills will that's what's required if you're going to have a business primarily through direct outbound prospecting. How did you first and foremost form the mindset to get through call reluctance to say, this is how I'm going to build my business, even though it is the most difficult way, but it is the most effective way?
To get through that mindset, I mean, it was kind of like what I talked about earlier. It was kind of the fear or the wall, so to speak. And I knew that, like I said, man, it was do or die time. I had to pick the phone up. And up until that point, I didn't really have that much call reluctance, in a way. I won't say, like I said, last year I would circle prospect some, but that was a very long game.
Yeah.
That was me calling, introducing myself and saying, "Hey, if you ever decide to sell, keep me in mind." They're probably not going to, because they might be 6 years down the road before they do. And I don't want to wait 6 years for a deal,
right?
And also, I follow a lot of realtors and I see them get a lot of listings, and I know they're at home with their families and stuff. And I've got a little girl, I've got another little girl on the way, and I've got a beautiful wife who really supports me in everything I do. And I feel like I owe them to build a big business, but also try to be here as much as I can. And when you got that, man, I got a desk right here that basically says I write on it every day or every other day when it gets erased by my 6-year-old, but it just says, "Make them proud." And that's what I've got to do every day,
I love it, man. It's so strong. It's so strong, Bill. Thanks for sharing that. So that's a great mindset. So let's break down your lead sources. So Sure. Is it mostly for sell by owners, or are you working any other sources of business right now?
So it's mostly for sell by owners. I would say that's a good portion. I will circle prospect from time to time once I get a listing in a neighborhood. A lot of my listings are rural, so there might be somebody that lives 2 miles down the road from them. So I don't really circle prospect those as much. But it's primarily the last 6 months, 4 or 5 months, it's been for sell by owner and referral. Because also now, once my people see me on social media, post listings and whatnot, it's like, "Oh yeah, Bill's an agent. Let me reach out to him, see if he wants to sell me
exactly right
something." And I don't mean to like say, "Hey, listen, put yourself out on social media and you'll get the rewards back, because I'm not saying that's wrong, but I've tried it before with no listings and it's a lot harder. But when people see you doing the work, they want you to work for them, because I'm a hard worker. At the end of the day, it's what I can hang my hat on. I might not be the most talented, I may not be the best looking, but I tell you what, I will outwork anybody that you put in front of me.
I love it. Well, and what you're talking about is something we call evidence of success. So
Yes.
once your sphere of influence sees how hard you work for other people, then they say to themselves, okay, it's safe that we can now use Bill too. Look how hard he's working. Look at the results he's getting for others. It's that social proof. And that's why it's working so much better on social media now than it was before, when we were just maybe going out there and asking for business without the evidence of success, without the social proof of others getting success by working with you. So I love it. So you're working for sell by owners. Let's give the audience maybe a little for sell by owner masterclass. And so let's talk about the initial contact. So what are some best practices? What are some mindsets? What are some skills, tactics, strategies you use on the initial conversation with the for sale by owner when you first reach out?
So I've got your script book. I've got FSBO 1.0 and 2.0. And initially when I first started, it was basically just get in the door to go see them or ask them if they want to work with a seller or a buyer eventually. But what I do now is basically I introduce myself. I don't go by the script line by line. I'm very
good.
I'm not. It's not like a minute by minute schedule. Right. It's also not a line by line script for me. I just have bullet points, and basically I do the intro. I ask them if they're still selling on their own. I definitely make sure I tell them that I respect the fact they're doing on their own. And then one thing I ask that's a little different is, even if the pictures online say that it show that it is vacant or that they're still living there, I always ask. Because what that does is that opens the door. Whenever I say, hey, are you still living in the house or is it vacant? They say, yeah, we're still here. I say, well, where are you going to next if you guys get this thing sold? They'll tell me, they'll give me their motivation. They'll say, we want to move to our aunt's farm by the end of December. Then I know their motivation. I know their timeline.
Yep.
Okay. So then if they don't give me that, I ask them when. And then the last question I ask them to kind of open them up, because I like to ask short questions and let them talk to me for 5 minutes.
Smart.
But I say, hey, have you got any feedback? I see you've had it listed for 17 days. You got any feedback? Yeah, we've got this, we've got that, we got that. And I say, hey, listen, I know you want to be where you want to be at the end of December, but let me ask you this. If you don't sell it in the next week or two, that's going to put you in the middle of October, end of October. Are you open to listing it with an agent like myself, or are you guys just going to rent that thing out? I've never had anybody say, yeah, we're going to rent it out. They're always terrified. They're like, I'm not doing that. There's no way.
Right.
And so I say, hey, listen, I'm going to be in the area tomorrow. I would love to take a look at the property. And in the meantime, I'll try to scoop you guys up a buyer. I don't have one right now, but I'd like to also drop off my for sale by owner backup plan. I said, you only need to use that. I say something like, try to say something funny, because I try to be funny on the phone. I'm like, hey, it's like that fire extinguisher. Just break the glass if needed. I was like, that's what this is going to be. I said, I can't afford to put glass on every one of them, but I'll give you one without glass. And they laugh, and they usually invite me over, and I really don't even talk to them about the house that much. I just have a conversation with them.
Yep. And, super good.
And so I follow up with them.
Yeah. So then that, I mean, you hit all the major points on the first call, on the first conversation that we teach, right? And it's all about using pattern interrupts to respect where the person is. We're not confronting them. We're not challenging them on selling by owner. We're being very respectful. We're asking hypothetical questions that the seller may or may not run across in the future, which then lowers their defenses. They feel a lot more comfortable talking about something that isn't even here yet. Yeah. Then that allows you to have the seller, to your point, invite you to the property so that you then can deliver a thing of value. We call it the for sale by owner backup plan, and simply have a conversation with the seller to put in the seller's mind, like, listen, if you can't sell, you have a resource in Bill who can help you down the road. So at the appointment, that initial appointment, just give us maybe one or two things that you find very helpful before you get into the follow-up.
Really, first of all, they always meet me at the door. They ask me I ask them to invite me in. If they don't, they show me around the property. And sometimes I'll ask them, like I said, I'm basically there the first time to build a relationship. So I say, what's got you guys want to sell this place? Or I'll say, what's your favorite thing about this house, and all that good stuff. And So then I don't talk about listing their house, why they came up with the price. I don't talk about any of that until the last few minutes before I leave.
That's right.
And so I'll, whenever I can feel the conversation getting dull and dwindling down, I'll say, hey, listen, I said, I know I come out here and, I'll give them my spiel and I'll say, here's my for sale by owner backup plan. What I'm going to do is, if this is a Tuesday, okay, I will say, I'll follow up with you Friday before it goes on the market. I'll give you, or before it goes through the weekend, I'll give you any tips if you need any before that. And then I'll also follow up with you next Monday to see how it's going. And if you feel like you may need me, then holler at me. And if not, we'll continue to go until you feel the need to list it with me. And that's basically it.
It's great because you're setting a great, solid, upfront agreement on what the next steps will look like, without beating around the bush, so they know what to expect. And then through the follow-up is then where you convert all of them into listings. Is that true?
That is. And something I forgot is, usually when I ask them for feedback or while I'm there, I'll ask them how the process has been going.
Sure.
How's it been going this last 2 or 3 weeks since you've been selling it? And I'll be honest with you, Brandon, I would say a good portion of the for sale by owners that I went to, they always say, I just don't have time to do this. It's not because they want to make the most money or that they're like, hey, we need to, they're sitting there going, I got a job. My husband's got a job. We're not here to open the door on the weekends because we like to travel. And so again, I remember these things. And when I follow up, I touch on those. I'm like, hey, remember, if you list with me, I'll put a lockbox out there. They'll always be accompanied by a realtor, or, you say you don't have time, you leave the state for a week at a time, you can't show for that week. So that's another thing that I do.
Yeah. You're doing a great job uncovering the pain. And then it's those pains that cause people to make decisions based off emotion because of the pain. And those are the leverage points that you use during follow-up that helps you then win the listing. If you had to guess, and maybe you know this, maybe you don't, from the time you do that initial appointment to the time you're sitting back at the house taking the listing, what is the average length of time, Bill, typically?
A week.
Yeah. Is it that fast now? Yeah. And that's what we're finding too, because the market right now, people just don't want to, if they're going to do something, they get pretty sick of it pretty fast. They throw the white flag and say, okay, come list me. Yeah. And so a week or two goes by and that's when you get all your conversion. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, let me rephrase that. I guess a week wouldn't be, I wouldn't be meeting him on a Monday and putting the sign in the yard the next Monday.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I would say I follow up with him in that week 2 or 3 times. So a week or two. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. And the follow-up is where most agents have questions. Is there anything that you found that works really well for you when it comes to follow-up that you think is really moving the needle in your business?
Just like I said, after that initial meeting, I do a really good job with that relationship, finding things to call them back about.
Yes, okay. Specifically, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And I always I'll take notes so that way I don't ask Bob about his granddaughter, but it was Sue's granddaughter, and you're going
hilarious. That's so good.
But no, man, that's initially what I call and follow up on. I'll say, I love following up on Mondays.
Yep.
You ask how the weekend went. You say, hey, listen, I would have followed up sooner, but I was out all weekend showing houses. I'm sure you guys were the same way. And
I love it.
They're like, no, we only have one showing. And you're like,
exactly.
Oh. So
smart. I love it. So listen, I guess, you're doing a great job. I mean, I think you've listed a dozen or so for sale by owners this year. You'll end up somewhere around there, and to your point earlier, with the skill sets that you now have, with the momentum, with the pipeline, as we move into Q4 and you start to think about 2023, maybe you haven't thought about it this far yet. What do you think you can accomplish in 2023? If the goal was 5 million this year, coming out of 1 million in 2021, what do you think 2023 could look like for you?
I've already been thinking about it.
It's been my man. I know you have. So
it's been on my mind for 2 weeks now. So really what I want to do next year is I want to do somewhere between 8 and 10 million. And I want to do 20 listings next year. I want to get to a point, and I don't know if next year will be it. I may be trying to put the cart before the horse a little bit. But what I would like to do is basically find somebody to handle my buyers. When I make somebody homeless, for lack of a better term,
yep.
sorry.
Yeah.
right now I'm battling with that on a few people, and it's really taking up a lot of time, and I'm fine with that because my business isn't where I want it to be yet. And I'm not so busy that I can't turn around. But next year at some point, I would like to find an agent that I know and I trust in my area and be like, hey, can you show this for me? And then, I've heard somebody on your show before do that. And when I heard that, it was almost like it was like music to my ears. I said, that's exactly how I want to do this. So next year, if I can get to that point, I will. But anyway, 8 to 10 million, and at least 20 listings. And I want to bring my price point up. It's at 175 right now. I want my price point to be at 200 next year.
Yeah, great goals. One piece of advice, Bill, for maybe a new agent that might be watching the show, or if you could go back a year or two and get licensed all over again, what would you tell yourself that other new agents could benefit from on this show?
Don't be afraid of not knowing. Don't 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 try to overstudy. Don't try to over listen to the good, the bad, and the ugly about real estate. Pick up the phone. Start with for sale by owners. Start there. That's your lowest hanging fruit. Some people don't want the agent that is the flashiest and makes the most money. Sometimes if you call enough, you may get lucky on your first one, and somebody may be like, thank God you called me. I'm tired of dealing with this. Will you come list my house for me? But pick the phone up, call until you get your first listing, and don't stop doing it until you do. And then just do the work, man. That's it.
I love it. I love it. Well, Bill, I appreciate you very much. Certainly people that will watch the show will also appreciate you taking the time to do this. And I wish you nothing but the best. And I know that through your hard work and your dedication, that great things are going to happen for you and your family. So I want to thank you for coming on the show today.
Well, thank you for everything you do. I mean, I know you put a lot of work into this craft, and I know that everybody telling you thank you means a lot to you. But again, man, I've been listening to everything you've said for the past 6 months, and without some of your teaching and your coaching, I probably would be punching a clock right now instead of getting ready to go 2 hours away to show a house and list another one. So thank you.
Well, that does mean a lot, and it makes it worth it. So, Bill, we'll stay in touch, of course, and enjoy the afternoon. Go take some listings, and we'll see you guys soon. Thanks for watching.
See you, man.
See you, Bill.